Yeah.
16-hour work days and very dangerous conditions. I mean, that was on the horizon.
John had laced the gruel with so much poison that after only a spoonful of food, Ludmilla vomited.
Oh,
So he realized the children were simply going to get very sick, but not actually ingest enough poison to die.
Oh.
It was just enough that one spoonful, they're just going to get sick.
Oh, and then they're just going, yeah, that's not going to work for him.
So he quickly forms another plan. He grabs his pistol, forced the children into a bedroom. He claims he didn't speak to the kids. He pointed the gun at the oldest child and shot her in the back of the head.
Oh, my God.
She died instantly. Then he proceeded to kill the other children. He shot 4-year-old Annie on the bed. Then he took the baby Emma onto the bed, covered her head with a pillow, and shot her. Later, powder burns on the pillows and the children's heads would show that they were shot at close range and died instantly.
So I just don't understand what mindset he's in. I feel desperation, and maybe it's been hard for a long time and stuff. But I mean, he's also the guy who took all the money, went out west for probably some months, came back penniless. So he's not really getting the Father of the Year award in any respect from me. But so you try to poison your kids, which you don't do it right, because who knows how to poison someone. And then you decide you're just going to shoot them all. I mean, what the hell? I just don't get it.
After he murdered his children, John locks the apartment door and goes down the street to Blaze Borton's saloon, basically on the same block as the apartment. Now, regular barflies would note Kemmler because he was not familiar to them, pacing back and forth in the bar for about 20 minutes and seemed like he was whispering to himself.
Okay.
They described him as having a look of great trepidation, which is a great word.
That is a great
People
word.
just don't express themselves in such a way these days.
Well, I guess what he had just done was pretty big thing, right?
He finally orders a beer. After finishing his drink, he asks Borton, the saloon owner, to join him outside. Once they're out in the street, Kemmler handed Borton the key to his apartment. He said, "I've murdered my children." And then he just turns and walks away.
What the hell? That's crazy.
When Anna Kemmler returns to the apartment, it was about the same time as Borton, the saloon owner, arrived. He had gone to check on things because he wasn't exactly sure if this man was telling him the truth.
Or talking out of his mind. Yeah.
It was reported that Anna was so overcome with the news of her children's murders that she had to be led away by friends.
Well, I could imagine.
The scene was absolutely devastating for everyone who came into contact with this crime scene. Within an hour or two of the murders, word had spread fast through the community. John Kemmler had gone on to drink at Martin Smith's saloon, which was uptown. A patron of the bar named Adolf Engel, who had only minutes before heard what had transpired in the attic apartment, recognized Kemmler, walks over, grabs him up, and drags him to the sheriff's office, which was only around the corner from the bar.
I'm surprised they didn't string his ass up.
Once searched, the sheriff found the pistol on Kemmler's person and a note in his pocket with 3 words scrawled on it: cyanide of potassium.
Okay.
The sheriff, a man named Kingsbury, told Kemmler he'd need to lock him in a cell so he could investigate what was being reported. But instead, Kemmler confessed to everything. And it was in a very matter-of-fact manner, with no remorse. He told the men he was out of work, couldn't make ends meet, and his fear was that the girls would grow up and be led astray.
My God.
They'd be happier in heaven. So basically, he killed his kids so they wouldn't turn to a life of prostitution. Was what he was alluding to.
I'm sure they would have took their chances.
He admitted he had been planning to murder his children for about 10 days, with the original plan to commit suicide after murdering his children. Kemmler said after he saw the dead kids, he couldn't go through with killing himself. I mean, what a piece of work.
That poor guy should have started with himself.
Yeah.
Those people, man.
However, Ludmilla, the oldest child, initially didn't die. She lived until about 9 a.m. the next day, When Kemmler was informed of this, he offered to go finish the job.
Oh my God. Damn.
The city buried the children, and something like 2,500 people attended. It was a German-led service, and many were being turned away from the funeral service. The New York Times had a reporter on the scene who also wrote that he was told Kemmler had abused his wife for years.
Yeah, well, I'm going to imagine he wasn't. I mean, that sounds like he's just not a good person. You know what I mean?
While awaiting trial, Kemmler's behavior started out being normal. He was cooperative. He would talk freely about what he had done. But then at some point, he begins acting very strangely. He stopped recognizing people who'd come to his cell repeatedly, like his lawyers and jail employees, just pretending he didn't know them.
Right.
Or maybe he really didn't recognize them. He would talk about his wife, his mother. His mother had passed away, and he talked about her like she was still alive. And people had believed Kemmler must have been insane at the time of the murders. And newspapers began reporting that his behavior was devolving into this very abnormal kind of thing where he was refusing to speak English, having these fits.
Yeah.
Dr. James H. Denny from Boston, who had made insanity his specialty for about 15 years, was brought in to examine Kemmler. He suggested Kemmler suffered from furious blind mania.
Oh, gosh.
Bright's disease, which is like a disease of the kidney. And also, Kemmler had had a brain injury at some point, which could have caused him to murder his children.
Well, okay, so you could have some frontal lobe damage to the brain, right? Which could be his impulsiveness and all that affected like your run-of-the-mill serial killer kind of person. But, I mean, he could be just a horrible person who's selfish, right? Just the burden of the responsibility of these children and stuff was more than he could bear, really more so than what their welfare would be. Or he could just be acting. So, I mean, yeah, that's a really crazy story.
During the trial, it also came out that just before returning from Denver and settling in Holyoke, Kemmler was actually in Chicago and had married a woman named Frederico Mayo while he was in Chicago.
Okay.
He said his name was Rudolph Bernauer. During his stay in Chicago, he bought a saloon for $115.
Wow.
He told his new wife that he was going to settle some business in Holyoke before he returned back to Chicago.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Yeah, he's just an asshole.
Get this.
Yeah.
There's also another report that he married a woman named Miss Mers, with whom he had an illegitimate son that was maybe about 8 years old.
So, on top of everything else, he's a damn bigamist.
No, yeah, so not only is he a child murderer, but he's an adulterer and he's a bigamist.
Which was actually a big deal.
Eventually, John is sent to the Worcester House of Corrections, the criminally insane ward, and he was there for about 8 years before being transferred to the Bridgewater State Farm. On July 1st, 1897, Kemmler hung himself with a noose he improvised out of rope and a handkerchief. He was buried in an unmarked grave in Bridgewater, Mass.
Yeah, he sounds like just a major old-school shitbird.
Anna Kemmler continued living in Holyoke in a house near Germania Mills. In the 1920s, there was a census where she reported that she was 78 years old, a widow, and living alone, and then she died shortly after that census was taken.
Wow. Poor woman. Could you imagine? You know, I found something here that I was not aware. You know, you got the matricide, patricide, all that. But the act of killing one's own children, do you know what that's called?
No.
It is prolicide.
Prolicide, okay.
P-R-O. Did not know that.
Well, thank you for sharing, Dylan.
Yes, you're welcome. And I'm sure there's some people out there that already knew that.
Thank you for sharing prolicide and for giving us an insight into the delicious recipe that is gruel.
Yeah, doesn't it, like the thinner the better it sounds like, you know?
Can I have my gruel gluten-free, please?
Yeah, well, you don't have to worry about it. Just add more water or milk.
Okay.
Lactose-free milk, which I'm sure was abundant in the 1850s.
Now, our second story takes place in Maine.
Okay, so we're all up in the Northeast.
Captain James Purrington was born in 1759 in Baldwinham, Maine. He married Betsy Clifford of Bath. Together, they had 12 children.
Oh my gosh.
That's a busy family, right?
Jeez Louise.
4 of them died in infancy.
Oh.
In August of 1805, he moved his family to a suburb of Augusta, Maine, known as Ballard. It's a little community. I mean, at this time, Maine wasn't even like a state.
Now, do you think back then people had so many dadgum kids because the infant mortality rate and everything was so high, they figured that like only 60 or 70% of them were going to grow up?
Probably, and I think they didn't understand the pull and pray method.
Yeah, and plus, I guess they needed all hands on deck, right?
I guess so.
Plenty of help.
Yeah, I guess it gets boring on those cold, lonely Maine evenings.
Yeah, I bet so.
The family seemingly settled into the small town life, integrating themselves into the community, making friends, hanging out with the neighbors. Captain Purrington was 46 years old and an independent farmer. He supposedly had a handsome estate, a good reputation, and was known to be industrious.
Wait, he's a damn farmer? And his name is a captain?
And I don't quite know how he earned the title of captain.
I think you can get it in other ways. I mean, I think there's some, I've heard various other, I can't remember exactly what, but yeah, I thought for sure he's going to work a damn riverboat or something.
I mean, maybe he did.
Oh, maybe he did at some point, or maybe he was in the armed forces in some capacity.
Perhaps.
Okay.
Record keeping, not always up to snuff.
Damn, you must be a pretty badass to just go around telling people, just call me captain, right?
Oh, captain, my captain, yes.
Yeah.
On July 9th, 1806, sometime between like 2 and 3 a.m., James, who is Purrington's son, fled to the neighbor's house, proclaiming his father had gone mad and murdered the entire family.
Oh my God.
The boy had injuries, but they were only minor. Captain Purrington took a razor and an axe, murdering his wife, Betsy, and their 6 children, and the youngest being only 18 months old, Louisa.
God, with a razor and an axe?
He then took his own life after murdering his family. Another of the Purrington children, Martha, survived but died about 3 weeks later from her injuries. Here's the deal. James, the teenage son, would state he awoke to his mother's shrieks. He jumped up from bed, ran to the door. It's dark in their home. Only the moonlight coming in the window is like the only light he can see, right? He runs to the door. As soon as he reaches the door of the bedroom, his father struck him with an axe, but it passed over his shoulder and hit him in the back. Captain Purrington then attempted to strike him 1 or 2 more times. At this point, the younger boy, Benjamin, woke up, ran over, tried fleeing from the bedroom as well. This is when James was able to like break free and take off running.
Okay.
And escape. Dean Wyman, the neighbor, and Mr. Ballard, another neighbor, after James arrives at their house, telling them what's happened, they decide they're going to examine the scene. They find a bloody massacre. Take candles, go to the house, are poking around in the dark. They find Mrs. Purrington laying in her bed, her head almost severed from her body. Near her on the floor is her 10-year-old daughter, Anna, dead.
Wow.
So they could only assume that the 10-year-old girl heard the mother screaming, ran into the bedroom trying to help.
Right.
In another room, the 2 oldest daughters, totally butchered. The 19-year-old Polly was almost decapitated, just brutally murdered with an axe. The second, 15-year-old Martha, was wounded. Her head was resting on the body of the 18-month-old baby. And now Martha's the one that survived, but only for 3 weeks.
Oh my God.
So she's laying her head on the 18-month-old as if she had tried to shield the baby and was attacked. In the room with Captain Purrington, they found the 6-year-old and 8-year-old sons, Nathaniel and Nathan. They were dead. Their throats had been slit with the razor. Captain Purrington slit his own throat as well. The 12-year-old son, Benjamin, was found in a state described as mangled. His pants were halfway on, as though he were trying to escape, which makes sense because remember, he jumps up out of the bed.
Right.
trying to get dressed, trying to run out